Okay, this is a recorded interview with Mr. Matthew Fogg, who is a retired Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal who won the largest ever $4 million employee Title VII discrimination lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice. And we're going to be discussing the recent three recent killings, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and less heard about was Delron Smalls right here in Brooklyn, and his funeral service is actually going to be taking place tomorrow here in Brooklyn at 4 p.m. I am Catherine April Waters with 2 T's, and this is for the People's Internet Radio and also Awake Radio. So thank you for interviewing with me, Matthew Fogg. If you don't mind, just give the listeners a little bit of your background. Talk about the lawsuit that you won.
Right. Well, sure thing, Catherine. Thank you for having me on your show. And I've done a lot of stuff with CNN, MSNBC, a lot of major networks and television, but I think sometimes small or radio like this, internet radio, is when we reach the grassroots people, and that's who I really want to reach. And so, but my background is I'm from Washington, D.C. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I was a part of the March of Washington. Dr. King gave his famous speech, I Have a Dream, young kid at those days. And well, I don't know how much y'all, I guess I was a teenager then at that time. But, and also I was still in segregation because I remember I couldn't get in the Washington Eastern Branch Boys Club right on Chapel Hill in Washington, D.C., where I grew up at, because it was segregation. And what normally happens when segregation starts, or how it started with the white folks, as the black folks moved in, the white folks moved out and moved to the suburbs. And so, but a lot of would often just come back into the city to use the facilities, because a lot of the facilities were still for whites only, segregated. I always remember the Boys Club was a block away from my house, and we would go into the Boys Club, and we'd go around, and, black kids, we'd look through the window and see the white kids having all the fun. But before the club would open up, the white kids, a lot of times, we would play with them on this big sort of field, grassy field, throwing footballs around, having fun. Because we were young, and we didn't really understand racism and segregation at that time. So we would play with these kids and almost play together. But when the Boys Club would open up, we all go running up to the club, to the steps at one time to go in that club, and they would stop the black kids and let the white kids go on in. And so, I mean, this happened a few times. I didn't think too much about it, other than just that we knew for some reason they could go and we couldn't. So then one day I went home and I asked my mother, and it made her emotional, because she was trying to explain to me. I realized later on she was trying to explain it in a way she wouldn't break me, make me feel like somehow I'm less than somebody white. But she would tell me there were laws that we had to do what these laws told us to do, but she said they were an abomination before God. She said, and son, don't you ever let nobody tell you not as good as any other kid. And so I said, okay, Mom, I'm still not really understanding why she's saying that. But then when those tears rolled down her face, that got my attention real big time. And I said, Mom, why are you crying? I don't need to go in the Boys Club. But I'm kind of like really like upset because I can't figure out why you're crying. And then she just turned and looked at me and said, son, maybe one day you'll make a difference. Well, later on, when Dr. King came, and when he came to Washington and did his dream, I Have a Dream speech, we kind of moseyed in because all the people coming into the city, and it was just a big event. Again, I wasn't really quite grasping the real magnitude and the significance of it, but I had been seeing on the TV, at that time it was black and white TV, so my father was a TV repairman. So we always had TVs in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And they were showing the police turning the hoses loose on the blacks down in South and Birmingham and down in there. They were showing the dogs being sick on them and billy clubbing people and all of that stuff, and kids sitting at the lunch lines and being yanked off the seats, because by that time CBS and all of them was covering this stuff. So we were seeing it, and you were seeing it was all because about black versus white, and all of that. So, and then I myself had an experience just an invaluable experience in my life where I got arrested. Well, what it was a young kid. I was working at a Safeway store, and as a food clerk, I could pick up, and a little young kid with about 4 or 5 years younger than me, he would come around and help people put their groceries in their cars, and they would give him a tip. There's another little gang of boys about his age or a little older. If they came around their corner, they might try to beat him, take his money, but they wouldn't mess with him if I was out there. But one day they caught him out there, they beat him up, took his money, and the manager, found him out there, and the manager asked us to call the police. So we called the police, and sure enough, the police officer knew me because the year before I had worked as a summer youth employee at the police department. So he said, "Look, if we catch these guys, Fogg, would you be willing to? Would you know who they are?" I said, "Well, I don't know their names, but I can witness to who they are. I know the boys that come around, I always pick with them." They said, "Okay, no problem." So he took down my name, and another store employee's name was a witness. Well, lo and behold, about a month later, I was 17, wait till I turned 18. And then the officer had somehow got my name and the other employee's name twisted up on the report as a suspect, even though it was on there as a witness. He got it turned around as a suspect. And this white detective came to our house and locked me up, came in my house on a Saturday morning, had police in the front yard, the backyard, everything I'm going to be doing in the future, and locked us up. And my mother was all upset and everything, and took us to jail. I'm hearing a little feedback.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, are you getting that? Because I'm hearing it.
I don't hear it.
I'm hearing it. You don't hear it?
No.
Okay, sound like a little feedback. I'm hearing now. I don't know. Did you turn your sound up or something?
No.
All of a sudden, maybe learn. I'm getting this feedback. Yeah, I'm hearing myself like you got a speaker or something on.
Okay, so
when it starts.
Right. So your name and the employee's name got mixed up, and they arrested you.
That's right. They arrested both of us.
Oh.
And they came and got us on a Saturday morning. When they came in the house and made me put my hands behind my back, my mom all upset, emotional, because and they said it was robbery. She knew I would never robbed them. She was just totally flabbergasted. They carried me out of the house handcuffed, and then they put me in the back of a paddy wagon, and there were the other employees in the wagon sitting there. He got his apron on. They had gone and got him. He had been working at the Safeway that morning. They got him from the store. So took us down the station. Now, we were baffled and had no idea why we were being locked up. We just couldn't figure it out at all. But trying to make a long story short, when the officer got us downtown, apparently when he told me what it was that I had done, a relief came over me because I realized then they made a mistake. And I'm thinking, wow, what a relief. But the officer, white detective, and when he realized he made this mistake, he wanted me to go ahead and say I did it just so he could cover himself, I guess. Yep. And I was shocked, and I'm not going to admit it. I said, "You got to be crazy. You done made a mistake." I said, "We're the witnesses in this case." White detective, so he said, "Well, if you don't," he said, "Look, if you don't do that," he said, "you don't admit to this, you got to go over there to that cell block." He said, "and wait till Monday." I had no idea what he meant by the cell block. I told him I wasn't admitting to nothing. But when they took me over that cell block, and I had to sit in that cell, then they put a guy in the cell with me who was going through heroin withdrawals.
Right.
And that was just a very, very emotional thing to see, and scared me to death because I thought the guy was turning to a werewolf.
And
I didn't know anything about those drugs.
You were 18 years old at the time, right?
Yeah, I was 18 years old, but I knew I had no experience with drugs and drug withdrawals and nothing like that. So I was like, and then finally when we found out that it was somebody that took some drugs, they finally pulled him out of the cell, and then we ended up going to court that Monday, and they took us all over, loaded us up the bus, and the US Marshals handle all of that stuff. So in DC, they don't have a search problem. So all of this stuff is going to be what I'm going to be doing in the future. And sure enough, they released me from the cell, from the courthouse that evening. My father came to get me. I was all upset. I said, Dad, I need to walk home. I went back down to the station, talked to the detective. He tried to tell me the boy said I did it, but he was lying. Boy never said I did it. He said, man, I never. The minute they told me that they had you locked up, he said, I was very sick. And I told him, y'all was to help me out. So I knew the detective was lying. White detective, he was lying. He just, he wanted to cover himself. Anyway, they told me the records would be expunged. They didn't say expunged. They said I wouldn't have no records. And I kind of just went on and let it go and moved on my life, ended up going on to college. I graduated from college, and the record is still there. And I get a degree in criminal justice, and the record actually affects me from getting a job.
Yeah.
And I had to go get the record expunged and everything. And, and finally, and then ended up getting a job at US Marshals. So, and just to show you, I went from even how getting arrested to seeing how these arrest records have affected so many young black men. Because I can imagine if I went through that, what others are going through. And then I ended up joining the Marshal Service in 1978. After I got my degree in criminal justice administration in 76, joined the Marshals in 1978, went to the Law Enforcement Academy, learned how to do everything, shoot, point, shoot, kill, everything else, learning just everything, and from law enforcement, and then ended up started working with the Marshal Service, and I just saw right from the academy all the way through I just began to see these remnants of racism in the law enforcement. Even a lot of targets that we were shooting at were people of color. And so we come out, and then we ended, and I always remember when I got to my duty station, the first thing the boss told me was, hey, Fogg, I know you guys learned all that stuff at the academy, but let all that stuff go, because this is how we do it here. So it was letting me know there's a culture already in place, and this is how we do what we do, and we want you to just go along with our program. Were people of color. And so we come out, and then we ended, and I always remember when I got to my duty station, the first thing the boss told me was, hey, Fogg, I know you guys learned all that stuff at the academy, but let all that stuff go, because this is how we do it here. So it was letting me know there's a culture already in place, and this is how we do what we do, and we want you to just go along with our program. And then as things went further, I began to see how operations were done. I began to see various things that we did certain ways. When I started working on fugitive operations and so forth, I started working on dragnet operations where US Marshals work for police departments around the country. I worked in Miami, Chicago, New York, different police departments. I began to see the racial disparities of who we were locking up. Began to see the constant locking up of people of color, African Americans, filling that institution up, because you got to realize when I was there, those are the days we were really going through the building the prison system. Can you hold 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So I began to see pretty much how we were racially profiling. A lot of the stuff that we were doing was targeting black areas.
So right, you were saying that as you were getting more into the criminal justice, you were seeing
Right.
the racism, and you were even told by
Right. This is how we do it here. And pretty much to go along to get along.
Who said
And
that?
then
Who told you that?
my boss, the manager, when I got to my duty station in Washington D.C., first thing he said was, "Fogg, I know you learned all that stuff at the academy." He said, "But let that stuff go. This is how we do it here."
Yeah.
And so he was just letting me know, just, because in the academy you learn all of the right ways to do everything.
Right.
A lot of the stuff that we see occurring now in the law enforcement is, at the academy you learn all the proper things. People just begin to mutate and evolve into their own, sort of culture of doing things, the way they want to do them. So that's what a lot of times happens in these departments. It's like, all of the things, you say a little saying, if you run from the police, ain't no giving up, because you're going to get, you got an ass whooping coming. They're going to beat you down. That's what they used to always say. And they let the dog go and let the dog fight you, or just all kinds of things, they would do to people, and especially mainly in areas like black neighborhoods and stuff where they knew people didn't have the money, couldn't hire the attorneys, couldn't fight back. And so it became, a lot of times it became a scenario where you want to get your numbers up. When I started working in the drug war and was assigned over to DEA and everything, all of this stuff was a trend, go to the urban areas, go to the places where you can get your numbers up and they can build the prison system and everything else. And that's what happened. And so that's why I was an eyewitness to this stuff, and I started complaining about it. And then not only the racism, but it was also affecting internally my career and the careers of other African Americans, because on the job it was straight up, bigotry. Whites were being promoted, blacks couldn't get promoted the way whites could. Even if you had the best record and everything else, I came on the job with a 4-year degree. I was considered one who was most likely to succeed. But I ran into racism as soon as I got there, and thank God they made me an EEO, a collateral duty EEO investigator and counselor. And once they did that gave me all the training of what it takes to file an EEO complaint and follow through on it. Because my job was to, help people. When somebody filed a complaint, help them process it. But in a way, it trained me on how to handle it if I ever had to file one, which I ended up having to file one in 1985 when we had a white, particular Chief Deputy Marshal who was known to destroy the careers of astute African Americans. So he was known to have racial animus towards blacks, and so I challenged him one day. He set me up and pretty much told some lies on me to get me pulled off a high profile America's Most Wanted assignment. Got me pulled off the assignment and got me thrown back into an area on every job and everybody's job, whether law enforcement or what. There are particular areas where people may not necessarily consider desirable assignments. They don't particularly like, we call them Siberia. And there was one particular location on my job working in Superior Court where you pretty much just was in court all day and sitting with prisoners and stuff that nobody, especially young people, you want to be out there doing something. And so he got me sent back to that location from a major task force. So I filed a discrimination complaint against him, and that complaint set for 4 years until they was getting ready one day to take this guy and try to get him promoted to become the head US Marshal, a presidential appointed position. And I boldly went up on Capitol Hill and told them why they shouldn't promote this guy and all of the racial animus he had towards blacks and everything else. And when I did that, they ended up verifying some of the stuff that I said he did, right down to telling a coon joke at a retirement party for 2 African Americans in front of everybody. He stood up, this white guy told this coon joke. And so that was the part that I think really solidified, you know, his not getting the position, because he was told that he was wondering why the Marshal Service weren't investigating my complaints, and they said they would hold up on his nomination until my complaints were completed, and he just said, well, he'll pull his name out of the running and he'll just go ahead and retire. So I played a giant, but behind that, then all kinds of retribution started in my career, and this is what we're talking about when you're a whistleblower. And you blow that whistle behind the blue wall of silence. There are a lot of things that can happen to you. Guys leaving on, you know, they left me on a stakeout, get killed. A lot of stuff happened to me. To God be the glory, but I ended up winning in federal court. A major civil rights decision. The jury was so upset when they heard everything. It took about 20 days of trial, but when it was all over, that jury said, pay him $4 million, reinstate him to a GS-15 Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal, and found the whole United States Marshal Service to be a racial hostile environment for all of his African-American Deputy U.S. Marshals, and further found the director of the Marshal Service was personally responsible for one particular discriminatory act against me, and that director went on and became a federal judge, where he's now the chief judge of the Southern District of Miami, Michael K. Moore. But he was found to be a discriminating official by that jury. Now, the judge turned around and you had stuff that occurred before 1991 and stuff occurred after 1991. The incident that he affected me on the promotion occurred before 1991, so the judge was able, even though the jury found that to be a discriminatory act, the judge overturned it. The present judge.
Yeah.
So pretty much, I mean, my career, and then I ended up retiring in 2008. And I was at Ground Zero in New York City. I was a first responder there. I continue now. I'm on CNN, MSNBC, a lot of radio, a lot of talk shows, you know, talking about, you know, how racism works in law enforcement and what I observed, and even down to the point to where when we were doing our drug, I was working for DEA as a cross-designated supervisory special agent and U.S. Marshal. We were doing drug and gun addiction, and I remember one of the special agents in charge telling me that if we go into the more affluent white neighborhoods and go after these drug dealers and lock these people up, kick their doors, and do the same stuff we're doing in black neighborhoods, they're going to make some phone calls and shut operations down. So we might as well go to the low hanging fruit,
right,
the weakest link.
So then relate what you were just saying to these recent killings of Alton Sterling, Philando,
right,
Castile, and also Delron Small.
Well, the gentleman that was killed in St. Paul, Minnesota. I mean, and we can go on. We can talk about Michael Brown. We can talk about
Eric Garner. The 2-year anniversary of Eric Garner.
All of these killings. I mean, when you look at a lot of the situations of how aggressive police were, that's what I always observed. How police carried themselves in the black neighborhood. It was always that sort of aggressive policing. I used to see New York do it all the time. It used to really get under my skin. I had to tell cops many times, you're not doing that in front of me, not under my command. Now, we U.S. Marshals, a lot of times we would deputize these state and local, so they would work closely with us. And then that's when you would see sort of these behaviors come out. And it just was a culture that I observed that cops were, like I said, they just had this sort of racial bias culture about them. But again, a lot of times, like I said, my case, and most of your federal and local agencies had some form of racial discrimination complaints internally anyway. And so that same internal culture would just simply translate to how they operate on the street. Because I always said, like the New York Post did a front page story on me in 1997, me and my two colleagues, and they titled the story "Bigots with Badges." Bigots with Badges. And so that's going to be the title of my book. I'm writing and sending. But it ran this story for 3 whole days, featured story about how racism in the U.S. ranked and found in the U.S. Marshal Service. So I'm like saying, now if I got to worry about a bigot with a badge and I'm carrying a badge with a gun like he is, you can imagine what he's going to do to the civilian force. So that was always sort of the mindset was this type of stuff. So when you look at a shooting, some of these shootings, like the one in St. Paul, and you look at the way this officer reacted in such a way that he just gunned this kid down, and then he's like still aiming after the guy told him, "Look, man, I have a license to carry."
Yeah.
And then he's not even trying to render first aid. They just standing there and just aiming at him. Nobody's coming over to help, and when they do, they take him away, and they consoling him, and the guy's bleeding to death.
Yep.
So again, I think what people are seeing is the sort of cavalier, sort of animalistic sort of way blacks are treated a lot of times. And that's what I observed. I would see them beat people down unnecessarily.
Right.
You see things that occur. You see them charge people with crimes just for anything, jam you up.
I mean, it's pretty. It's pretty clear. This, policing is not about setting young people on the right track. I mean, it's
absolutely not. About setting them on a track to being incarcerated. It was about filling bed space in these prisons they were building.
Right.
It was about creating the second slavery.
Talk about that.
About making sure that they got a PDI, a prison a number, so that they can't compete. They cannot, so that they have to do just like you were a slave. If you don't have some papers on you, they got a right to lock you up.
Yeah, I mean,
it was creating that type of society.
Right. I mean, we clearly, and I've been saying this for a long time, I mean, we don't live in a, let's try to change direction society. Like, let's try to improve and make things better. It's policing and all these things that say that they're supposed to be about, you're protecting and serving. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, of course they're not protecting and serving. I mean, they might be protecting and serving some people, but they definitely need to keep and create a certain amount of people and create the conditions in certain neighborhoods that actually make, even if people in desperate neighborhoods did commit crimes, in my opinion, that is not a crime if you're desperate and you're just doing whatever you got to do to, to survive, which Mr. Sterling was doing. I mean, selling some CDs. Apparently some homeless person called, said he had a gun or something, which again, it is legal. It's an open carry state. And I mean, they just shot him dead. I mean, they had him pinned, and they shot him.
And they just shot him dead. But you see, again, it's this over-aggressive, even where they grabbed him, the way they have to jump on him, like they could wait, they have backup coming, they could pick them off and got there. But it's just sort of, we're going to grab you, and once they grab you, then if you're another cop and you stand there, you got to get involved. You can't just stand there and watch one of your cop associates grab another person and you don't do anything. So it's kind of the police model. We all have to get in and get somebody subdued, but what you get is a melee. You get a bunch of people grabbing on somebody, throwing down, everybody's grabbing a part of the body, and if in that process, one of the people is being more aggressive than needs to be, then you can kill somebody easily because you might be holding their arm and somebody might be choking them out, like what happened to their gun. Yeah. Or somebody might pull their gun out and shoot them in the chest or kill them, or, just all kinds, take the page and page them too long. Whatever, just it's this aggression that comes out that I observed that would seem to come out when blacks did any type of protesting or would try to, I don't even want to say resist, but maybe it's like somebody pulls you and you just kind of pull away because you don't know what they're trying to do, and then they go crazy on you.
Yep.
So it is a culture, and this is something that is happening all over America, and it has been happening. The only reason why we're having the conversation is the technology of the cell phone. Right. That's the only reason why we have the conversation. If it went for that, we wouldn't. If this stuff had been going on, as you know, we've been, many blacks have been killed and beaten, put in jail, and unnecessarily targeted by white police officers. But at the same time, because you didn't have video, nothing was done. It was just you just at some point when everybody would look at the numbers and the statistics, then that's what you saw.
So I wanted to mention a few months ago there was a press conference here in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, with 12 officers. They call themselves the NYPD Blue 12. And they have a lawsuit against the NYPD and the quota system that the NYPD, just comes right out and blatantly denies exists. But then, of course, behind the scenes, it's clear. And they come right out and say it also, that if they try to go, and I'm just going to say what Adil Palenko said, if they try to go to, the Jewish neighborhoods and give out parking tickets, the Jewish people are not having that. So they, right. they go to, the low-hanging fruit, the most vulnerable neighborhoods. I mean, so it's just completely predatory. I mean, everything is completely predatory.
Right. And that's so true. And what happens is, it was a powder keg waiting to explode. And I think what they're thinking, this stuff is happening at the beginning of the summer. So it ain't like we're in the dead of the winter. So it's going to be a long, we got a long hot summer coming up here. And, people are saying, hey, it's been about time we get this stuff. And we're not going to let officials sit up here and try to just pretend like it doesn't exist. And that's why I was writing my story on a few bad apples. The name I'm putting with Bigots with badges, but my op-ed I'm working on right now is just a few bad apples because they keep saying that, out of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of law enforcement officers in the country, it's just a few bad apples. The problem is, you don't know which apple is pulling you over. So even if it's a few, you don't know where they are and who they are and when they might strike him. And these video cameras are saying, when you start seeing this stuff going across the screen and you seeing how people are gunned down and dealt with in these situations, you get to a point where, no, I feel like one of these guys might be pulling me over. And I'm a retired Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal. I can carry a gun and I got my badge, I can do all of that. I said, but still, I don't know when they pull you over sometimes what they're thinking. If it was and what they might do.
If it was just a few bad apples, then how come the good apples don't even arrest and discipline the bad apples?
Because the good apples, because it's a culture. Let me give you an example. Let me show you.
So then it's a lot of bad apples and not just a few.
Right, but the key is this. Compared to most of the culture, it could be just a few, but it's much larger. But in America, it's a culture. So it ain't just a few bad apples in America. It's a culture of it's like we said, a culture that's different.
It's capitalism.
But let me show you what bad apples can do. And I was talking about that. I said, now we all saw the police officers turn their back. A lot of them turned their back on their man, their commander in chief. About last year, whenever it was, and those police officers had a funeral up there in New York.
Yeah.
And now, let me tell you something. That sent a message to that man, because first thing, they were insubordinate, and they would have been court-martialed had they been in the military. They should have been disciplined. But they turned their back on the commander-in-chief in uniform. Now, that tells you how much power police have, police unions and police departments and agents. They no longer serve and protect the people. We serve and protect them. Because when they turn their back, they let that man know, you fool around and mess with us and we'll leave you hanging. We'll leave you out there to get messed over like they did me. They left me on a steakhouse, the white guys rolled out and left me. So what happens is, whenever you become a whistleblower, or you stand up, or you try to correct the culture has a tendency of attacking you like an antibody coming into the blood system. They all jump on you. So you got to stop him, because the culture has been created, it has grown, and it was never put in check. So at some point, it gets to a point to where now you forget that you're even wrong. You're thinking wrong is right.
Right.
And if somebody comes along and says, why are y'all doing that like that? That's not what you learned in the academy. What do you mean in the academy? You almost forget, because you've been so used to doing it now the way we call it street justice. Well, that shows you the power of police when they turned their back on that commander-in-chief and they were not disciplined. Nothing happened to them. I told you real quick, he said to himself, I need this guy to back me up, so let me leave him alone.
I've actually interviewed Frank Serpico a couple of times too.
Yeah, I know him, David.
And I mean, the fact that we have for-profit prisons in this country should scare, the hell out of the people. I mean, what kind of a country are you living in where people are going to profit off of putting people in jail? I mean, clearly they're going to be looking to put anybody and everybody and their mother in jail just to profit. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have so many conversations and interviews with people. Where is the American public? Like, why are they?
Yeah, because it was mainly black folks, poor people, and black folks. So it was kind of like the second slavery. It's like I always tell people, if you got a nation that was built on the human rights violations, the abominable human rights violations of slavery, and it didn't last no 10, 15, 20 years, it went into breeding. It went into hundreds of years. Your child being taken away. Black women couldn't get close to their children. That's why a lot of, in our culture, a lot of kids weren't really close to their parents or couldn't, because they were so used to, a mother knew when she had a baby, that baby wasn't going to stay with her. They was going to take that baby away from her. So you just knew that by the very nature of that's what's going to happen. So to me, you got that same sort of mentality. Like when they start the war on drugs is one of the biggest, probably it's one of the biggest, wrongdoings or biggest sort of atrocities that this system could have had that created the second slavery, because it was like we can just, with the war on drugs, we can do just about anything to go get them, and we will make sure we bring the drugs into the country.
Right.
Through now all the reports are coming out, but the CIA and all of them admitted that they was flying and bringing the drugs into L.A. and New York and Chicago, major cities, and making sure it was getting distributed, and then telling the cops, go get them. Those who don't kill each other over it, you go get them. So it was all by design.
Exactly. So I don't know if you said you had to go at 8:30,
Yes.
but
Yep.
so I mean, again, we need to continue this conversation because we need to hopefully encourage the people that are going along with it to not go along with it and to speak out, and the people
Right.
the people definitely need to start organizing and coming together, and I hope to interview you again because we could there's so many points that we didn't even really get to make, but again, just to sort of close. The recent killings of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and Delron Small happens because the policing is not about protecting and serving. It's about.
No, it's
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's getting away from protecting and serving. It's more about locking them up and it's more about enforcement than about community policing. It's about going in and locking folks up and getting your numbers up and stopping vehicles and so get your numbers up. Make it look like you're out here fighting crime. When you're not fighting crime, you're out here looking for incidents that can be escalated at the drop of a dime.
Right. It's predatory policing.
Pretty much.
Do you have a website or a blog, or Mr. Fogg?
Well, they can. I tell them, I just ran for Congress, so they can go to foggcongress.com. They can go to Bigots with Badges. Well, I got to get that site recranked back up, but I did have a site up there, bigotswithbadges.com.
What was the first one?
They can Google my name. Matthew Fogg. I'm on Facebook. They can Google me on YouTube. I got a lot of YouTube. They can just, there's so many ways when they put my name in the internet, they can find me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew Fogg. You are retired Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal who won the largest ever $4 million employee Title VII discrimination lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Nice talking to you, sir.
All we need is some music now. Dun, dun, dun. So, but did you turn it off for a minute?
Oh.
Let me know.